Все мамкины трейдеры собрались уже, криптоны, все ведущие инфлюенсеры, криптоблогеры, биржевики и прочие ребята, короче, все будут сегодня тут. Мы тоже тут.
А мы простые бродяги.
Да.
Посмотреть со стороны, что атмосфера идет, для чего все это делается.
Приехали на разведку, так сказать.
Суть происходящего.
Лицами торговать особо не будем. Хотя было куча приглашений всяких там, аирдропы, не аирдропы, приходите, гольф-поле, там будет этот, тот, всякие, короче, инфлюенсеры, потом начинаешь проект щупать, смотреть, там что-то с каминой воняет маленько, и, соответственно, думаешь, вот ты придешь вот так вот, будешь там светить своим лицом, вот, а потом это окажется скамом, там надо еще прийти, написать обязательно пост, ну, короче, смешная история, приходишь, мне кажется, даже будут подходить, чтобы ты показывал телефон, что в телеграм-канале пост опубликовал, чтобы ты их не кинул. Они успели тебя, там, твою аудиторию поддавить. В общем, тут дикие джунгли, коллеги, эти блокчейн джунгли, я бы даже сказал. Тут можно назвать свой какой-то альтернативный форум блокчейн джангл, короче, и все. В общем, как-то так. Будем смотреть. Остужаем турбину, газили сильно, вот, и будем глядеть, что тут происходит на этом форуме. Stay tuned. Так, ну что, вот пока суть до дела, остается буквально минут 15 до старта мероприятия. Мы с Алмазом решили прогуляться, посмотреть, так сказать, окрестности. Что будет тут с таким соломенным заборчиком. Да, расположился Экспо-центр. Ну и тут, да, какие-то вот прям газон. Не знаю, играет тут в гольф или нет. Но фонтанчики неплохо так бьют. Вот, ну посмотрим, друзья, посмотрим, что тут будет происходить. Крайне интересно. Даже смыти птички есть тут. Да, я не буду снимать что-то виллу, если только за деньги. А, симпатичное гольф-поле тут. Или просто поле. Гольфистов мы не видим. Ну да, тут как бы такие вот решения. Интересно.
Lexus для таксистов.
Таксисты на Лексусах ездят. Оно и правильно. Какое-то болотце. Это может полив быть, кстати. Ну, вон, видишь, тоже какая-то штука. Этот чувак не вывез, засох, короче. А, нет, что-то там пытается. Держи, старина. То, наконец, какой-то запах растения, да, Алмаз? Да. Чуешь? Что-то. Да.
Марки, все застроил. Государственный застройщик.
Угу.
Тут тоже тут много монополий в разных сферах.
Так, ну тут выставка как выставка, собственно. Вот. Всякая разная. Ну, стенды очень красиво оформлены. Ладно, покажу тут, пробежечку сделаю, чтобы было понятно. И, в принципе, много людей. Вот. Как-то так. Очень много майнинга и очень много криптосервисов по трансферу денег, обмену всяких таких штук.
Fee was so high at that time, even no layer 2s on Ethereum. So people need to pay huge gas fees on transaction. So they could not compete with CEXs. But now with Hyperliquid, the new like cloud technology, the trading experience is just different. So back to your question, I think users still need to choose the trading platform which fits you the best. If you care about KYC, if you care about your self-custody, if you care about transparency, go on-chain. But you need to have this ability to keep your assets safe. And also you need to be careful because everyone can list random tokens there. There's no selections, there's no, so you need to be careful about which token you are trading. You need to be responsible for yourself. And if you care...
Nobody cared about it. Nobody wanted to move it. It was such a small community. But enter the blockchain. That technology has revolutionized the world. If you think about what has taken place in the last 10 plus years, it's unprecedented. It's a way for the entire world to be connected, not only with information, but now with money, and with new types of money and new types of currencies. So my main focus today is to deliver on the promise of blockchain, deliver on the promise of Web3. Why have we been in this space, in this industry for so long? Well, the blockchain, democratization, equal access to high quality financial services, access to high quality currencies and money, the ability to interact with the rest of the world. The promise of Web3, tokens, wallets. Web3 kind of evolved after 5-6 years of blockchain technology advancement, and enables the community to reap the rewards of the ecosystem. So right now I'm bringing to market a couple new companies. I'm the co-founder and chairman of Stable, STBL, which is the evolution of the stablecoin. We'll dive into that in a little bit. But we've come a long ways in the stablecoin space in the last 10 years. It's time to upgrade them. WeFi is a purely decentralized on-chain bank, a Web3 bank, a bank built from the ground up that enables the community to be the ones that reaps the rewards for all of their interactions of using these high-quality banking services. And most recently, we just raised $1 billion with Reserve One. Reserve One is a digital asset treasury. This company will be trading on the NASDAQ to deploy into Bitcoin, altcoins, generate yield, make investments into the ecosystem. A highly and professionally managed company that provides the rest of the world, not all of us early adopters that are here, but the rest of the world that just want to call a stockbroker. It provides them easy access to crypto and to the future of finance. So, we have come a long ways. And today, we're entering the era of utility. So in the beginning, speculation. All people did was trade coins. And why did they do that? Well, it's exciting, it's fun, and they're still doing that. Take a look outside, you'll see the World Series of Crypto Trading. I was pretty blown away by that, but it's actually pretty cool. A 2-day contest, they start with $50,000, they get to trade, and one person wins. So in South Korea, I also read that it's one of the most popular things going on right now, and it's eclipsing esports in popularity, just trading crypto. So in the beginning, that's all there was to do, was to speculate on these tokens. And then the infrastructure arose. A lot of builders came in because speculation draws time, attention, and money, brings people into the space. And what happens then is true innovation. And so over the years, we've had these different innovations, and each innovation is driven more and more by speculation, beginning the just tokens, and then ICOs, and then NFTs, and then DeFi. But that brought more time and attention, and now today we're entering in the era of utility. So after a decade plus, people are saying, stablecoins, that's the killer app of the blockchain. Wow, you can move money globally instantly for free. It's about time people realize that. But a few things have shifted. Most importantly, what shifted is the regulatory winds around the world are at our backs. In the past, if you're a large institution or bank, you would get in trouble. You wouldn't play in that space. But now, since they're all leaning in, it has opened the floodgates, and now stablecoins are the main narrative. And in addition, RWAs are a huge narrative. All these traditional assets are coming on chain. And so now, stablecoins are here to bridge the gap between traditional finance and digital ecosystems. And what that leads to is to the evolution of the stablecoin. Because now that everyone can create one, we're going from the old world that's been around now for 10 years, the old way of doing a stablecoin to the new way, to the evolution, stablecoin 2.0. If you think about what the main issues of stablecoins have been in the past, is that all the collateral was off-chain. Everyone used to complain, oh, is Tether really back? Oh, is the collateral there? Are the reserves there? Where are the reserves? Where's my audit? It's extremely difficult when you have hundreds of banks around the world and lots and lots and lots of money and lots of scrutiny to provide complete transparency. The technology is just not there. It's no one's fault. The technology was not there. But today, the technology is. Because all that collateral that backs these stable coins is part of the RWA narrative. All these companies now are tokenizing treasuries, money market funds, all sorts of other traditional assets, high quality assets. Low risk, high yield, they're all coming on chain. And so what happens when they come on chain? Now they can be used as collateral. So in stablecoin 2.0, 100% of the collateral that's used to back stablecoins moving forward is going to be on chain. So that's a big part of it. But even more importantly, we all know how much money, how much revenue these traditional stablecoins companies are earning. $25 billion in profit last year amongst the stablecoins. Tether announced the other day $15 billion in profit this year. That's every single penny there is earned on a dollar that you gave them, that the rest of the world put into the ecosystem. $200 billion have flowed into stablecoins. Not $1 has flowed back to those users that put in that $200 billion. That's what's going to change with stablecoin 2.0. You put the collateral on chain. And since it's the ability to have collateral on chain, you, the user, get to be the minter. You can use protocols such as Stable. We've coined this stablecoin 2.0. We're introducing this new movement to the world, and I promise you that more and more and more companies are going to follow suit. Because once this genie's out of the bottle, you can't put it back in. Once people see, okay, I can have completely transparent collateral, but more importantly, I can earn the yield. And it's not through a yield-bearing stablecoin, because a yield-bearing stablecoin in itself is inherently a security, so it's not freely trading. But even more importantly, a yield-bearing stablecoin, in order for you to earn the yield, you have to hold on to it. You have to put it in your pocket and just sit there. You lose the utility. So we've solved for all of that, because you put the $10,000 into the system, you mint the tokens, we strip the yield, so now you get 2 tokens. You get it into another yield NFT that collects that income stream. And at the same time, you get a freely trading stablecoin, exactly like USDT, USDC, etc. That's the advent of stablecoin 2.0. And now that there's these protocols, these technologies that enable individuals, companies, states, governments to issue these tokens completely on-chain, completely transparently, it's opening the door to something new. A new revelation, a new revolution that the world's never seen before. This is ecosystem-specific stablecoins. That's a mouthful, but it's just a fancy word for white-labeled stablecoins. What that means is that every successful ecosystem, every large organization, is going to issue its own currency. Because it makes so much sense. Even Amazon and Walmart, there's recent articles stating that they're investigating their own currencies. All the ecosystems are going to create their own currencies because right now they're using dollars. And that doesn't really work for everyone, but dollars are inefficient to send globally to make all these payments. We all know the pains of the banking. That can be solved with a stable coin, but more importantly, it can be solved with your own stable coin. Because when you can create your own branded currency, you get a few extra bonuses that are extremely valuable. One, imagine a company like Amazon tens of billions of dollars just flow through its ecosystem, just to its employees and its vendors and its service providers, and it's global. Imagine if everything was an Amazon dollar. So now those tens of billions of dollars, Amazon gets the yield. Every large organization is trying to increase their yield, increase their efficiencies, and that's what a white label stablecoin enables them to do. They get the yield, they get all the benefits of a stablecoin, so global instant free payments, no more exchange rate issues. And more importantly, they get data and analytics. Think about what kind of analytics you get today about the money that flows through your system. Not much, except for some, this was spent there, there, and there. But now, since this is programmable money, you get real data on all of the users, and you get to understand who are the power users, who deserves more, who deserves to be rewarded. So it really leads to some very interesting innovations for those companies. So why will they do this? They capture the yield, monetary sovereignty and control. Because now money itself becomes an asset on the balance sheet. Not just the cash, but the fact that it's called Amazon cash, Walmart cash, this large corporation's cash. That becomes an asset in itself. And most importantly, data, analytics, and rewards. We all know about loyalty points in all of these different types of companies. This is loyalty points times 1,000. It really will supercharge what companies are able to offer their users. So they'll be able to extract more value from their users. But more importantly, they'll be able to deliver more value to their users. This is going to open up a lot of opportunities that were not possible before. All sorts of companies are going to do it: retail, large corporations, social platforms, and gaming. But one that's near and dear to my heart, that's really exciting, is charities. When you think about charitable giving today, you donate money, it goes into a black hole, and you hope a house is built, or a child is fed, or some service, some cause is serviced. With a stable coin, with programmable money, with complete transparency, with the ability to understand where that's money going, and have a whitelisted wallet, and ensure that people are actually delivering the services they're going to deliver. And more importantly, let's say it's a stable coin that generates a lot of yield. Imagine if you just use that stable coin traditionally, but you're able to easily and transparently provide the yield that you are making to a cause that you care about. Now this stablecoin 2.0 future gives us the tools and the ability to do things never really possible before, never really thought about before. The internet democratized information. It allowed the whole world to learn a lot. The whole world to try to connect to the rest of the world and participate in the economies and great businesses. But until the blockchain came, until currencies came, and until stablecoins came, the rest of the world couldn't really get paid. They couldn't participate and they couldn't interact. Now we have the technology that connects to every person in the world. And it allows us to pay them pennies, pay them dollars, just pay them, reward them. And for a lot of us here, that's not such a big deal, because we're fortunate enough to live in very advanced societies, have very good financial services and access to dollars, etc. But most of these other countries don't. It's truly a game changer. It's truly going to change the way that they get to interact and the quality of life that they have. And so now, all of these organizations out there can try to build their own stable coins, they can use their own structure, or most of them will lean into these new protocols that are coming to the market soon. That's one of the most exciting innovations that's happening today, is the fact that there's hundreds of stable coins means that there's going to be more and more utility for people, and the best product is going to win. Another thing we're introducing at Stable is MAS, money as a service. Because now we can provide the ability for people to create their own money. And it's not just traditional money, it's this white labeled stablecoin. It's a stablecoin that provides both that company and its ecosystem significant amount of more value. The future of money is plural. There will be hundreds, if not thousands, of stablecoins. It's very programmable. We now have the technology to do things with money that we never were able to do before. And it's inclusive. As I touched on earlier, we really now finally can connect the rest of the world to world-class financial services, to currencies that don't just go down and up every single night. They can have stable currencies. They can upgrade to dollars or even euros or yen, but they have a selection and a choice of something outside of the country that they are trapped in. And very soon we'll have hundreds of new currencies that's going to service all the people around the world. And when you enter AI, it's going to really make this future happen. Because then the AI will really enable actual utility of the blockchains and all of the technologies below. Because right now, it's still quite complex. But very soon, and I think the panel earlier touched on this, how important AI is going to be on blockchain to enable real slick user interfaces so the whole world is finally going to be able to participate in the true future of finance. So thank you guys very much.
We just talked about real-world assets. Now I'm back to talk about CBDCs. Real-world assets, super excited. I can see a real use case. I can see a real benefit to humanity. CBDCs, I'm not sure. So maybe my esteemed panel will change my mind. Every government is racing to CBDC. Everybody wants some, but really, let's start with the first question. What is CBDC and what is not a CBDC?
Yeah, I think that's the million-dollar question, right? And for the last 7-8 years, where I've been involved in different CBDC projects from Sweden to England, Asia, you name it. The question is, what is it really, right? I mean, it stands for a central bank digital currency. The thing is, we already have digital currencies managed by central banks. So then a lot of people say, oh, it lives on a blockchain. But most of these projects actually don't live on a blockchain, right? They live, if you're very lucky, they live in a sort of a distributed database. But most of the times, that's not that either, right? Then there was this sort of hype where we said, okay, we can actually help bank the unbanked about this, right? And there's some really good use cases, and specifically South America and also China, who actually created a CBDC who allows for sort of thresholds. So people who could not get bank accounts because they didn't have a national ID or they were under a certain threshold, they could use their mobile phone and get direct access to a digital version of the local currency, and by that actually enter the economy. And I think that's really where we have to start with this discussion, right? Because if this should be really valuable, we need to expand the features of money. So if you're a politician or you're a state, and you only have fiscal and monetary policy to do with, you are getting locked in, right? So what we need to do is we need to kind of look at how do we expand the features of money to serve the population in our country by changing the narrative between the corporate banks and the central bank.
I mean, if I was to sum it up, I mean, very simple. CBDC is public money. Stablecoin is private money, and Bitcoin is no one's money, basically.
Bitcoin is what?
No one's money.
It's no one's money. It's the people's money. So Carl, why are governments racing to implement CBDCs from your perspective? You're the infrastructure layer within the virtual asset space. From your perspective, forget about the bigger, is it good for humanity or not? Is it control? Like, from the infrastructure perspective.
I mean, CBDCs, I think, are a natural evolution of what's happening in the digital space, and especially the Web3 space. I mean, if you're a government and you've been issuing money, fiat money, and printing money for as long as we can remember, the next evolution for that is how do you do that in a digital way, right? So if I'm going to wear a central bank's hat, and obviously I'm not a central banker, but their main responsibility vis-a-vis the country they're in is, managing the money supply, controlling inflation, etc., etc. So for me, it's a natural evolution, and I think they're playing catch up with everything else, right? I mean, stable coins have been around now for a while and are proving their the reason they're around, right? Instant settlement, cross-border transfer, 24/7 money, and obviously now with the use of AI agents are operating or will operate on the blockchain or for payments, etc., etc. So for me, it's a natural evolution. There's part innovation and there's also part control, right? They should still be able to control what is, at the end of the day, public money. So there are concerns, and I'm sure we're going to talk about some of the concerns. Privacy is a main one, but it was meant to happen. Now it's happening at different speeds, depending on where you are. We know here in the UAE, the central bank is pushing hard and is ahead of schedule, but we were talking earlier about the Nordics. The Nordics had started conversation about CBDCs, and it seems it kind of faltered. So depending if you're in an emerging economy or a developed country, there's different reasons why you would want to have CBDCs in place. And if you look at it from a retail investor or anyone in this room versus a wholesale or a government entity, there's different pros and cons for each.
So let's take a room temperature check. Who believes the government's promise that CBDCs will make this place, will make this world a better place and is for the better of the humanity? Anybody believes the central bankers or the governments? Who thinks maybe we don't really need to push into the CBDCs and who prefers the stable coins better? Who likes cash? Who likes shells or other alternative barter methods, including Bitcoin? Anybody likes Bitcoin? Okay, so we have a bit more of a libertarian crowd, which is fantastic to see. Welcome everybody. So Frederick, do you think there is an optimistic use case for CBDCs? Would they, can we really believe the governments that it will improve things, settle things faster? What is the most positive use case?
So I'm going to lean out of the window a bit and say we absolutely, certainly need CBDCs. But we don't need a new version of digital cash. This is not it, huh? So why is it we need CBDCs? Well, if you look back a little bit into the history, and I think most people sort of, at least in this room, is not too far off my age group, right? You remember a time where there was no internet. And what the internet really took away from the state was the control over identity. It is just a fact today that in 99% of all countries, the national ID gives you privilege, but they don't actually have the information which a Facebook or TikTok or whoever has about you, right? And the pushback for that was regulation. Specifically in the European Union, you see that really, really tough regulation about privacy. And they basically put in rules where, we're talking double-digit fines of your revenue if you breach what's called EU GDPR. Now, blockchain was sort of this little pet project from the people, for the people, and it was not really, so dangerous. But suddenly we saw that Bitcoin got real traction, and a few governments tried to shut it down, and they did not succeed. No one mentioned, nobody forgotten, right? And then on top of that, we saw this huge push in two large stablecoins, right? And both of them actually now being critical infrastructure in terms of capital markets, meaning that we actually have teams and national banks who is monitoring the liquidity of those stablecoins in order for managing inflation and capital markets. And when you look at it from a politician perspective, you're now seeing, okay, hey, this is a threat that we might lose control. But if you look at from the other side, there is this dream that we actually finally have a way to serve the consistency in our country, but we need to expand it. So if you look at the COVID crisis, or whatever we call it, depending on what side you are of the fence, a lot of politicians simply had no data, so they just gave $1,000 to everybody, and you saw travel was spiking and crypto trading was spiking because everybody just got free money, right? But if you really want to go where it really helps people, what you need is a tool like Cardano and Midnight, right? Where you have the ability to say, I'm going to share with the state nothing. But if there's a global crisis coming, and I'm a barber shop, I can share the last 3 years of revenue and client flows, so they can give me pro rata what is owed to me so I can survive through the crisis where they shut me down. So if we start adding these kind of features into this, and this is really what the politicians want, but they're being forced into this corner of privacy versus public versus compliance, right? But what the politicians really want in most countries is there a smart way I can service my constituency by this new tool? Looking back at the crisis, looking back at monetary and fiscal policy who's actually not doing what they wanted to do.
I like how optimistic you are. You actually genuinely think politicians want to service the people. It's a little bit optimistic. We have a lot of people from the parts of the world where the government has been showing over and over and over again that the governments do exactly the opposite. They take from the people, and every chance you give them, they'll take more from the people. But this is a very nice, beautiful, beautiful approach, a beautiful point of view. Carl, from the markets and the liquidity perspective, we have so much infrastructure already. We have the fintechs, we have the settlements layers. Do we really need CBDCs? I mean, they promise to settle T+0, right? Will that really deliver?
I think from where we stand, and again, people in the room, ourselves as XBTO, just to put things in context, we're basically a market maker. At the same time, we manage digital assets in a quantitative way. So we obviously use, and every trader in the room, and I think there's a lot of traders outside too, we need stable coins, right? For settlement, for liquidity. It's very frustrating today when you move from on-ramping to off-ramping. Someone sends you a bank transfer, it takes 3 days to arrive in your wallet, and then you're able to kind of put that to work. So does it solve? The problem is already solved. We have stable coins, and we see the adoption of stable coins, and there's different use cases. We use, as corporates that trade, we like USDC. If you look at emerging economies, they like USDT because it's more for a cross-border remittance. So I think we've already solved that settlement issue. And the reason why you have settlements is because you have those, players in the middle, right? Intermediaries. And that's a way for any banks to make money today. The same case, a very big innovation in crypto is perps. Right? That never expire, and you don't need to roll them over. In traditional finance, you have those contracts that have expiry, and then you have to continuously roll them over. Why is that? Because it's a way for people to make money, for those banks to make money. So, do we need CBDCs for that? We don't. We have stablecoin. Now, again, if I'm going to wear my central banker's hat, and I'm a government. It's one way to say, well, we would rather deal with public money than with a private issuer. What if something happens with those private issuers out there? Who's going to still be around, 10 years from now? Because there's a lot of stable coins being issued today. There's also banks that are issuing stable coins. There's a consortium of banks issuing a euro stable coin today in Europe. A lot of them won't be there 10 years from now. I still believe a bank-issued stable coin might not stay for long, especially if you're not, public. On the public, you're just a consortium of banks. There's going to be issues with adoption and all of that. But yes, we do not need CBDCs for instant settlement because we have instant settlement with the use of stable coins. But you will still need CBDCs for everything government to government, and hopefully to make central banks more efficient when they talk about monetary policy, when they do quantitative easing, when they do quantitative tightening. I think it's going to be a better tool than cash today, but that's it.
Well, my issue is that CBDC is meant to be a programmable money, right? But then the question is, what is being programmed? Who controls the program? Who decides that I've been a bad person last week, so we need to switch off my access to my own money? And that I would consider a threat, right? So we talked about the opportunity, now the threat. So Carl, do you think we potentially, with some governments, can walk into a total surveillance state where your every step, and I don't like that Carl drinks water. I want him to consume Coca-Cola because the Coca-Cola just sponsored my re-election yesterday, right? So you can spend your CBDCs only on that. no, it's ridiculous, but we've seen more ridiculous things coming out of governments.
We do. I mean, it's a tough question. For me, for CBDCs, the only role of the central bank should be to set the guardrails, right? They should set the guardrails. Commercial banks should be doing the distribution, and then you would have developers that build on top of that, right? It can become dangerous if the central bank is also in charge of the programming and also potentially in charge of KYC and all of that. So I think the only way CBDCs are going to be successful and at least adopted by unique mass adoption is making sure that they are these guardrails, because if not, to your point, you could instantly shut off someone's access to money for whatever reason, and it can be weaponized in some ways. Now, I'm not saying in every country, but it could happen in some, yes.
What do you think, Frederick?
I think it's about the scope, right? So the Swiss National Bank has actually done something called eCash 2.0. There's a really nice white paper on the technology, is public source, so you can go out and replicate that. Which basically created physical cash just on a type of blockchain where there's a higher level of privacy than we have with the US dollar in physical form. Huh? So I think when we discuss these things, I think it's really about, you know, what are we trying to do and why are we doing it, right? And I do have really large concerns with some CBDC projects that is waste of time because they're digitizing something that was already digital, and they're removing privacy because they want more control. And that is, I think, is a real concern in many countries, and we should be really wary about that. But I also do hope that we get better at voting, right? I mean, what's so magical about where we sit today in Dubai is a lot of people voted with their feet. And they came here and they live here and they built a business here because they were unhappy with their home country, right? But, you know, we need to challenge potentially democracy and also participation. You know, there's basically two people in the world, right? There's the people who's just trying to optimize their life for themselves, and I have huge respect for them. And then there's people who walk a harder path and say, I do not accept the financial and social systems of this world. And they start contributing to the blockchain space, but also to these debates about CBDCs. And they sit with the central bankers and they educate the central bankers, because I don't think necessarily the central bankers are evil. They're working under a mandate. And that mandate needs to be challenged, but it can only be challenged if you have the education and the understanding. And we see that with algorithmic trading coins, right? So, I mean, I don't know how many of you who noticed or was watching a couple of Fridays ago when we had the big market correction. How many algo stable coins actually kept their peg, right? I know 2, right? Out of the 15 I've been watching, right? So maybe there's more, I stand corrected. But we are in a situation right now where we cannot really replace central bankers like in German we say the Handwerk, so their skill set, with something as complicated as an algorithmic stablecoin. Now that being said, I don't think we cannot do it in the future. I'm just saying we're not there yet. And that's why we see these asset-backed stablecoins like just mentioned USDC and Tether is booming, right? And we see proof of custody and proof of reserves. But even though stablecoins were not faring that well necessarily across all exchanges a couple of Fridays ago, right? So we do have some design we need to do. Huh?
I have a follow-up, Frederick, if I may. Do you think CBDCs contradict the whole ethos of decentralization, something that we are fighting for and building?
So again, I want to be clear. I'm leaning out of the window and I say I think that if we had a well-designed, you know, CBDC with a good governance layer, it can serve more people than it can damage. Fortunately, that's not what we're getting right now. We're getting ill-designed, very centralized CBDCs who has the same controls and the same flaws in place as we have in the fiat world, right? And in such a world, you will see Bitcoin and other things will be striving, right? That being said, I mean, you know, some of it is also due to a lack of education and a lack of opportunities. I mean, how many, you know, hand on your heart truly understand the difference between Austrian economics and Keynes economics, right? How many politicians truly understand whether we should, you know, in crypto world, burn more fiat or print more fiat, right? I mean, let's be quite honest about that. You know, they're taking some really big decisions, which is being delegated by us as a population, right? And therefore, I think this CBDCs is so easy, right? Because it's just a digital currency, and then they look good, right? They do something digital, who might have a good opportunity in the future. But if you look at what Stockholm did up in Sweden and what the Bank of England has been doing the last 5 years, they did huge proof of concept and pilots and figured out they were not ready for this, right? And I think that's a good state as well. Saying no to something is sometimes better than just going with the flow.
Talking about England, something like 4,000 people went to prison for posting or sharing something on Facebook that the government didn't like, right? Imagine that's a perfect tool. Let us switch off their CBDC wallet so they have no access to internet or electricity to post on Facebook. So that is my main issue with CBDCs and some governments. Carl, the question I get asked all the time is, now that we'll have CBDCs very shortly, we will not have any use case for stable coins, and we'll definitely have no use case for Bitcoin, which boggles my mind that people would even think that, but I get asked this question all the time. What would you answer that?
I mean, I think there's zero correlation between the fact that there would be CBDC and what would happen to stable coins or Bitcoin. And the other point is if CBDCs, right? Because we're not there yet, and even when we are, will it even be, how will it be implemented? How will we be using it? So for me, there's no real correlation between those three assets, I would call them. If anything, I mean, stable coins are getting more and more regulated, which is, the evolution of things. It was deemed to happen. Bitcoin maxis are like, well, is Bitcoin still decentralized or is it becoming centralized because there's more and more companies owning Bitcoin, right? So it's kind of an evolution of things, and it's an evolution that's necessary if you have adoption and institutional adoption. So obviously pros and cons. So stablecoins are becoming regulated. I mean, even Tether is issuing their US stablecoin, right? If I'm not mistaken. So there will be stablecoins, like I said earlier, that won't be around 10 years from now, 5 years from now, because either they cannot be regulated or do not meet the necessary criteria. And as for Bitcoin, if anything, I think Bitcoin is here to stay. I think there's no doubt about it. And for players like ourselves, we will always need stablecoins to basically run investment strategies or to be able to go on-ramp, off-ramp, etc., etc. The last point I'll make around that is CBDCs, again, how will they be implemented? Who will be owning it? Is it going to be every country will have their own CBDC? We're talking about 190 of those. Is it going to be consortiums? And from what I'm seeing today is there's more adoption by the big banks. Again, Citi yesterday announcing a partnership with Coinbase that shows that stable coins are here to stay and being adopted by the banks that at the end of the day own distribution to all of us.
And if anybody wants to issue their own private stable coin, that is possible in the UAE under ADGM regime, under VAR regime, or an AD-backed stable coin under the central bank regulations. So we have 3 regimes to do that. Switzerland has just introduced a stablecoin act, the draft. So eventually that will be possible in Switzerland as well. But UAE is really ahead of the game on the private money, on the stable coins. Frederick, Cardano is working with multiple governments or supporting them on national identity programs, the blockchain frameworks. What are the biggest technical and governance challenges that you see by the governments introducing CBDCs, introducing the identity frameworks? Do you think they even understand what is happening?
It's really hard to speak about, the spaceship Earth we live on, right? Because it's so different depending on where you are. But I do think that, whether we agree that some politicians are good and not all bad is a large question, right? But I do think that they do truly understand one thing, right? And that is that identity is the key driver to merging the offline world with the Web 2 world and the Web 3 world. If you do not have a good digital identity in plural, so it's not about a national identity, you know, something like that, but it's in plural, so it's everything from crop dusters and Massey Ferguson tractors and satellites, you know, that you're able to trust that data and you know, verify and validate that data, all the way to what we do, which is the legal entity identifier, which is coming out of the global banking conglomerate, right? And basically moves 80% of all world trade, whether physical or paper trade, right? And is first level quantum secure. It doesn't really matter. It's this idea that you need to have trusted ways to basically have a higher output because your input is getting smaller and smaller. Most countries are really struggling with, you know, deficits, right? So basically they're being told you need to do more with less money, and one of the things we use is technology, and their digital identity becomes the key driver. The other part, which you asked, is sort of a little bit more tricky, right? Do they truly understand CBDCs? I'm not sure I understand CBDCs, right? But if you ask them, do anybody truly understand money? I don't think a lot of people truly does. And I think one of the things Bitcoin gave to us outside, you know, a fantastic protocol and the asset called Bitcoin, was a lot of people starting to educate themselves in what is money and what does it do. And I think if you're on the Orange Pill app, for instance, or something like that, you meet people who really went down into the rabbit hole and are able to understand economics in a way we don't teach in school. And I think we have an urgent need to understand this, you know, cross-pollination we see among countries and how money actually works and flows. And we should be spending more time on that, because in the end that can set us free. But it can also be the prison for the rest of our lives.
Absolutely. I have my first degree is economics, and when I truly started understanding what money is by learning what Bitcoin is. And if you haven't read the basic books on what is Bitcoin, you're really missing out, because everything else becomes irrelevant. Money, private money. Carl, do you think the banks, and let's focus on the UAE for a second, so the banks that will be issuing the private stable coins, the private money, do you think they will actively use CBDCs, or they don't need to, they'll just focus on their own issued stable coins?
I mean, the simple answer is the banks are regulated by the central bank, right? So if the central bank asks them to use CBDCs, they will. One case we have today, I mean, yes, the UAE has been at the forefront of digital asset adoption, but we all know today, players in the Web3 space, how hard it is for us to even open a bank account today in the UAE, right? So, and it's only very recently that some of these major banks can receive what we call NOCs from the central bank to service Web3 players or crypto players. So, at the end of the day, those banks are regulated by the central banks. In our case, for example, we're regulated by the FSRA and ADGM. If the ADGM comes up with a new, rule in their rule book, we're going to have to abide by it. So the way I see it is, again, the central bank should set the guardrails for those CBDC, and the distribution is going to be done by those banks. So once this happens, and it will happen in the UAE, and we're fairly close to the central bank in some ways, and what I like about the region here is that most of the regulators usually build a consortium and talk to the market players to really see what makes sense and what doesn't. And there's a few things that didn't happen because the private sector wasn't really supporting it. So yes, the answer is yes, is the central bank is going to issue whatever they need to make sure that those commercial banks today, or any bank we deal with in the UAE, will have to adopt. And at the end of the day, the way I see it is CBDC will, in some geographies where it's well implemented, will own the local payment system, and everything that's international and cross-border will be still run on stablecoins.
Do you want to add something, Frederick?
Yeah, I think in many countries we have some kind of democracy, right, and you vote. But how do you actually know when you vote that your vote has been counted and it's been counted correctly? And the answer to that is you don't, right? You have to take for granted that the institutions or whoever counts the votes or whatever kind of system was in place, that this is trustworthy and so on. But this decides the politicians, right? The second question, in many countries, not all, but in the majority of the countries, as you rightfully says, the banks are regulated by the central bank or by some supervisory authority. But does anybody actually know who regulates the central banks? Because most of the cases, there's nobody regulating the central banks, right? Because there's actually nobody who has the skill set or the mandate to do so, so they're basically responsible to themselves.
Да.
And you can argue, well, okay, you know, Fred, you're coming from a Swiss foundation, and they're also kind of, but we actually have an external supervisor looking over our shoulders, right? So I think there is an answer here to be found in, if we want a world where people are more accountable, and we need to be able to verify that. To verify that, we need strong identities, right? It doesn't matter that if we have to pull our pants down or not. I'm really on the side that we should not pull our pants down, right? But we need to have a way to say, I only voted once. There was no double spending, right? I can go in, I can trust it, but I can verify it. And when I use those words, they are directly out of the Bitcoin white paper, right? It's out of the blockchain ecosystem. And when you use those words to the people who try to make some governments better, right? They understand this. This is not so far away from what they want. So I think us as an industry in blockchain, we now finally has the tools, right? Bitcoin could only have one type of identity. Cardano supports multiple, so does Ethereum, so does AVAX, and so on, right? But I think as an industry, there's a few of us who should start banging the drums and start showing, you know, what would a CBDC be who actually serves the people, who has real privacy, who optimizes and settles in T+0, who has atomic swaps, where I can verify my contribution, right? Maybe have fungible money, right? That would be really nice, right? Because with fungible money, we can cut thousands of jobs in compliance, right? Because we can basically, you know, we can run a machine learning on it and we can verify it straight away, right? So I think some of it is also us as an industry. You know, we've been building in secret for so long and hoping. Maybe it's time now to stand up and show them what we got.
One point I wanted to make, it's something we're living day in, day out this year. I think the global theme of this year is trade war, right? And everyone's being impacted by that. We're moving from a globalized economy to more like putting barriers between countries. So just imagine CBDCs, how these could be used in kind of a weaponized way for these trade wars, right, today. From one day to the other, you will be able to switch the tab for anyone doing trade between one country and another that might not agree with, you know, the politicians' view or all of that. So I think they are very big risk, and more now that we're moving more from globalization to like setting up those barriers between countries and protecting our own economies. And that could also be the failure of CBDCs, because if you don't have this interoperability between the different countries, if we're going to have 190 CBDCs, it will also lead to the failure of those.
But that's exactly why we have a world reserve currency, right? We had since the Second World War, right? And I think, you know, the larger question here is that, I mean, the way you kind of frame it is that the dollar is a kind of a CBDC who has consequences when you deal with it, right? And there's a reason why you need stable coins, right? Because the dollar rails might be blocked or unblocked, right? But I think the two large questions is, how do we actually know that the decisions being taken in the trade war is based on actual facts? And the answer to this is we just don't know, right? So the second question we have is, you know, maybe Bitcoin doesn't work as a world reserve currency in terms of, let's say, trading fees and so forth like that, but it clearly shows that there's a pathway to running a balance sheet, for instance, in Bitcoin, or running a balance sheet in like a brick currency or like a basket of currencies, which also could include, you know, stable coins, right? And I think when you sort of look at some part of what the U.S. Treasury was talking about, right, with, you know, like, you know, building a treasury in crypto, such as, you know, Cardano, Bitcoin, and others, right? I mean, that is, you know, that is real innovation, right? Now the question is, you know, is it number-based decision making? Can you verify those kind of things? But some of this is really good innovation, and I think, you know, big credit to UAE for going the innovation path with a type of CBDC. I really want to see them pulling it through and adding some features or functionality, like you rightfully say, which they didn't have before.
Thank you very much for this very intellectual discussion. Let's summarize it. CBDCs, threat or opportunity?
Come on, man. Tell us.
Both. I mean,
Both.
Audience,
Right.
CBDCs, threat, raise your hand, or opportunity? Very pessimistic crowd today. On this note, thank you very much for being here and thank you very much for coming to Blockchain Live in Dubai.
Короче, эксклюзивные кадры из этого VIP-пространства. В общем зале, где выступали спикеры, крутые спикеры. Короче, 2 ряда, отведенные под VIP. Никого не было. Смотрите, что здесь сейчас происходит. Это крипто-тарелочники, я вам отвечаю. Смотрите. Да, согласны со мной? Согласна. Вообще, вот я там сидел, слушал, они тут просто вот, ну, занимали места. Вот. Небольшая досада. Так, ну что, коллеги, вот первый день для нас, по крайней мере, с Алмазом уже подошел к концу. Решили, с который час? 3 часа, нет, даже без 15:02. С 8 утра мы были, в 10 начали спикеры, до сих пор работают там, коллеги выступают, что-то рассказывают. Ну, в общем, первый день для нас, по крайней мере, закончен. Мы поехали встретимся с нашим коллегой. Это будет, мне кажется, более продуктивно и приятно. Вот. Ну, давайте поделимся впечатлениями, что ли, о первом дне. Хочу сказать, наверное, что я осознал и важно, что мы работаем, когда инвестируем в крипту, либо спекулируем криптой, либо что-то еще связанное с блокчейном, да, так или иначе, то мы имеем дело с нечто эфемерным. Ну, изредка где-то вот можно там общаться с коллегами и так далее. А тут офлайн конференции все-таки видишь, когда выступает кофаундер Tether, да, которым мы, собственно, ежедневно пользуемся, либо основатель Cardano. Ты видишь этих людей вживую, это уже как-то для, ну, как-то мне спокойнее, по крайней мере. Это важный момент, казалось бы, ничего нового там мы особо не вынесли, но важно, что ты видишь людей, которые приходят, ты как бы не один, это такое некая, да, стая криптонов, и, собственно, ты тоже там, и понимаешь, что некая, ну, что это не что-то эфемерное, что есть доверие, есть комьюнити, есть доверие, есть реальные люди, которые занимаются этими проектами, вот они выступают, ты их слушаешь, в общем, и где-то убеждаешься, что ты мыслишь так же, плюс-минус, где-то не согласен с ними, ну, в общем, по крайней мере, ты их видишь, и это важно физическое присутствие тех людей, которые создают эти проекты и продукты, и тех людей, которые их поддерживают и пользуются ими. Вот, наверное, как-то так. Алмаз, скажешь что-нибудь, что, как твои впечатления о первом дне?
Ну, тоже ничего нового не услышал. Как всегда, люди поделились на 3 типа в моих мыслях, да, и чтение эмоций и того, что они говорят. Это первые, это те, которые действительно не понимают, что происходит, и толкают дичь, да, в свет, так скажем. Ну, не в то русло несут течение. А вторые понимают, что это не в то русло, и за деньги это делают, но они как бы осведомлены, но деньги как бы превыше остального. И третьи, которые за правду, за честность, и показывают свое, поняли, куда все это идет, показывают свое недовольство, ну и сопротивляются, как бы остаются в сфере и делают все возможное, чтобы пролить свет, да, на все это, и как бы, ну, недовольны с тем, что происходит. Вот. Поэтому как-то так все, как всегда и везде, обычно.
Короче, Фредерик Cardano, респект, хороший мужичок, прям видно по нему, как он говорит, ход мыслей.
Его эмоции видно.
Да, единомышленник, ну и Cardano Foundation, проект такой мощный. В общем, как-то так, коллеги, собственно. Вот, сейчас покажем чуть-чуть дубайского, Дубай, да, такой вот, собственно, едем
Тяжело говорить и в таком этом рулить.
Да, тут шестиполосные эти трассы в городе. Тут, по крайней мере, деревья появились, что меня радует. Или мы в каком-то бедном районе остановились. Вот, совсем, где нету зелени. Мне кажется, в Дубае районы делятся богатые и бедные, отличаются тем, что в богатом у тебя зелень, там кустик какой-то растет, деревце, там собачка бегает, птичка летает. Вот, а в районе бедном там ничего нет, это прям гетто, короче, бетонное, жарит солнце и все. И хабиби ходят, и индусы, куча индусов тут, мне кажется, да, вот, как сказал твой брат, да, Абу-Хаир, что на индусах тут все держится, и действительно они тут...
Тут это не принято об этом говорить. Черная сторона.
Черная. Не принято говорить. Ну, это у них не принято, у нас-то что, мы тут вообще...
Президентов не принято эту тему поднимать.
Понятно. Принято давать на чаем. Вот смотрите, везде эти стройки, просто вот везде, вот едешь, и вот все строится, все. Огромные эти прям матрасы, по-другому, человейники. Если вы хотели увидеть самые большие человейники, ну одни из, по крайней мере, вот приезжайте. Бангкок вам рад, Дубай, Шанхай и так далее, перчатки тут все. Двоечку не пропускайте. Все, вот так.
Голова одна, рука одна.
Голову я ем. Все.
О, здорово.
Ну, встретили коллегу, решили прогуляться, очень рад видеть, Эрдоган.
Да,
Давайте пятака старик. Классно, когда приезжаешь, вот, я к Редвану в Анталию гонял, и тут в Дубае прям вот так пересеклись, что списались раз-раз, типа в одни даты, все, давай, короче.
Теперь гуляем и шокируемся масштабами в Дубае.
Жесть какая-то, ребята. Так, добрый день, коллеги. Всем добрый день. День 2. Едем мы на Крипто-конференс. Смотрим, что там будет. Программа почему-то не была опубликована. Надеюсь, так же, как вчера, все самые интересные спикеры будут в самом начале. Мы сможем до обеда уже поехать купаться. Но есть конкретные задачи, поэтому едем их выполнять. А у вас как тебе мероприятие? Отлично.
Ну, организация вообще на высоком уровне.
Да, организация потрясающая.
Есть даже отдельный человек, который, когда между спикерами и кресла меняют, он подходит, отдельный человек. Есть люди, которые таскают кресла, а есть человек, который подходит, безопасность проверяет и тряпочкой протирает после каждого спикера кресло. Это я первый раз такое вижу. Вот, и такие мелочи везде тут. Даже есть массажная комната, где можно на 10-15 минут тебе массаж спины, плечей делают и головы. Тоже вот организация на высоком уровне.
Да. А это у нас VIP-ликвидность. Крипто-тарелочники в деле, короче. Все как обычно.
Partner of DWF Labs, Andre Ratchev. Good afternoon after everyone. Yeah, I hope you had a great lunch half a year ago, and now we can discuss very interesting things and very important things in the current market stage. I would say it's about liquidity wars, because the market, every year, right, and every half a year, some conferences we're discussing this thing, right? How market is going to be developed, what is liquidity concentration, how it works, what is the reasons behind some moves and some changes, right? And this is a very, very important story, and as a very, very important story in our life and in our history and in financial markets, we should explore it from the early days, right? Because every story that is happening now is based on things that happened like years ago in the past, right? And what about this presentation, what about this talk today, right? This talk is aimed to share how we try to predict the future, how we try to identify important niches and the niches that have some opportunities to grow, the niches that will highly likely capture most of money flows, and yeah, when I say we, I mean that's our company, TWF Labs, and yeah, everything that I share is how we work basically. Let's take a look at the very, very early stage. I would explain it in the Star Wars manner, and yeah, let's imagine it was like old empire, like early days, right? At that time, we didn't have, the market didn't have that many tokens that we have now, right? In general, if we skip like small of them that's already died ones, right? We had just 5 very important ones, right? It was Bitcoin, which was created by the great Satoshi Nakamoto, right? And which is a digital gold. It was a very common internet computer, right? Internet, like decentralized computer, decentralized operational system, if. It was some memes for fun, it's Doji. It was an exchange token and crypto dollar. Why that 5? Because basically in the crypto space, right, through the all years, there are not that many areas that have long-term sustainability. The first area is its value, store of value. Second is transfers and payments. Third is investment and trading. And then some gambling and everything which is related to finance. That's it. The rest is like fantasies and R&D. And in 2017, when the whole market spiked up, and a lot of people that believed in each other, that believed in the industry, right? They didn't came to the crypto industry for money in 2010, right? They came for the technology. And then one day, they became very rich. And that's how ICO hype appeared. A lot of people that didn't have a strong financial experience, or had, but didn't have, of course, crypto industry experience because it's just created, right? Started to be investors. And as a very industry, as a very niche that has cheap money, a low quality due diligence, a lot of companies, a lot of people, different quality of products, right, came to the market, and it was ICO hype. And this hype pushed the industry to that environment when almost everyone could just raise money easily without spending like any effort. Just put your blockchain wallet on the website, chill it, and then you have some cash, right? But the party cannot be endless if there is no underlying values and long-term thing, right? And this is what the original market in the old days has been about, right? It was, as I said, these market niches, and the only thing that every project must have, it was trustless and permissionless. I would go and say, hey, I would like to tokenize bananas, I would like to tokenize some, I don't know, scam, I would like to tokenize taxi, delivery, whatever tokenize, right? I know other shady things even need a blockchain, right? And it was a depression, right? And I remember also 2018, right? And most of people in normal world say, look, this crypto is like a purely scam, right? It's everything got pumped. It's like Ponzi, then collapsed. Everyone lost money, and what are you talking about, right? It's all scam. But this collapse, as every collapse, it made sense because it was like at the beginning of the learning curve. A lot of people realized that, okay, if we're still here, if we still have capability to build, and probably we need to try to build, because the whole ICO hype, without ICO hype, basically, I'm afraid that we would not have this market that we have today. Because the hype showed that this market can be liquid, this market can grow, this market can have users, this market can have investors, right? And it was very helpful. It was very helpful for some kind of, some hope. And the silver light happened. Silver light happened right after the collapse, when smart people, but more smarter than the previous people who lost everything, realized that yes, we can build, and they start building. And as in a very, very obvious stories in our history, right? strong man created great times. We could see these projects that I listed here, right? For example, the Curve, Uniswap, Aave, Tron. I think everyone knows it here, and at least like everyone who has USDT, like use Tron like at least once, right? Same for DEXs and same for other things. Because these projects have been built at times when they couldn't raise money, they couldn't, scam anyone, right? They built it from technology for the idea that crypto space will grow. And this growth should have the following metrics. It should be trustworthy. When we say trustworthy, that you could verify things. You could rely on on-chain data, you can leverage real benefits of crypto utility. You don't need to have some scams or some, centralized stuff, right, as a product. You can have everything on-chain. And this project proved it. And as you could see, market get more traction. And the most common thing that was tokenized, it's lending and borrowing industry. It's basically loans and collaterals, because it is very common in normal mode and tokenized and shifted to the crypto space. And of course, like every good time create like weak man, right? And I think and I hope you guys also enjoyed this rally in 2021 when you could buy like whatever shit you want, and this pumped like 100x, and you can make money from this. But the reason, the core reason behind this growth was very similar to what happened in 2017. Because of the COVID situation, when a lot of people got blocked at homes, and because of helicopter money, especially in the US and in some other countries, to kind of finance living of these people, it created a massive flow, like a waterfall of liquidity to all the niches where people could feel that they can make money fast. And crypto is like, make money fast, you can gamble, you can even be a builder, you can try stuff, right? And everything started skyrocketing. I remember when we started our kind of venture business in 2021, we invested in some projects. It was like, 5% unlock at TGE, and we could cover all our investment just by selling this 5%. It was like pumped like hardly, like every single token. But of course it cannot be true. It is unrealistic because this market was super inefficient. And of course, many companies got rich from this, right? And many people lost kind of everything. But when market is very rich, we can easily buy and sell stuff, when you can feel that you are a genius investor, when you could feel that you are, the best in the world, what happened? Basically happened that you replaced trustworthy to user-friendly. You don't need to check anything, right? Because why I need to check stuff? I buy stuff, it goes up, right? You prefer to kind of take things that you can understand, that are easy to work with. And that's why at that time, and bad times, I would call it bad times because, and this hype situations, usually most of people lose money. Someone cash out, but in the end, in the spike, like most of people would lose. Trustworthy was replaced to user-friendly. But market niches, how you can make money sustainably, didn't change it, right? It was the funds, it was some stables, it was exchanges, it was blockchains. Nothing changed. It was very similar to the early days. It changed a little bit in terms of amount of them, but not that critically. And the logical way, if you remember the story of 2017, repeated just 5 years. 2022 happened, right? It started with Terra Luna crisis, and then people started thinking, well, maybe if we have some stable coin which is backed by some shitcoin and it generates 20% a year, it couldn't be true, right? Now it looks like obvious, but at that time, I know some guys who brought like hundreds of millions US dollars to fund this 20% because they thought, look, it's UST, it's very big, nobody would let it die, but someone, this nobody or somebody or don't let them die or they will stay. It's not a fundamental stuff, it's just our expectation, which can be very, very different to reality. Then, after that, another hit to transparency, it's FTX crash. And people started thinking, okay, that's how we can trust the industry, right? It's like, it's scam again, right? And if you remember that times, most of articles, most of media, major media complained about the crypto industry that is full of scams. It is Ponzi and center, etc., right? And repeat, 2018, right? It's very similar. Scale was bigger, of course, but the narrative and the situation the same, right? People stopped thinking about risk management and trustworthy. People start following just short-term trends and pumps, and the result is like this. It's not bad to make money, it's good to make money, but if you go all in, it's always going to end up like this. And what happened next? You could see people realized that, okay, maybe it's better that we don't have really user-friendly stuff, but we have kind of reliable stuff that we can check, that we can trust. And if you remember, that time, reserves, transparency reserves appeared on CoinMarketCap. Exchanges started sharing their reserves, their obligations, their debt, etc., right? A lot of DeFi things started happening, right? And even in our business, I remember that some projects that we worked with asked us to move coins on chain just to make sure that we have them. And yeah, we had to do this, and we did it. The market started asking questions, and this is next stage of the learning curve. And 2023 until today, I would say that's another cycle. We cannot say that from 2023 to 2024 to 2025, no. The cycle started in the end of 2022 after the crash and started developing in 2023. And now we have everything that we all dreamed for in the last years, from the early beginning. We have institutions in the market, please, there are institutions. You want to have regulation? Sure, there is a Genius Act. There is multiple frameworks how to work with crypto in multiple jurisdictions. You want to have exchanges, centralized exchanges are waiting for you. It's easy to onboard. You can use fiat or whatever, right? You want to trade on decentralized market, easy. You can go and trade. Tokenized assets are here. Yield-bearing products are here. Everything seems good and everything seems to be developed. But the very important thing that we need to keep in mind that must-have things and fundamentals didn't really change again. The only one thing kind of had been added is compliance, because institutions, they need compliance. Institutions need to follow this, and if you compare today with 2017, when the whole market was against banks and central, now like it's common for everyone to pass KYC, to pass KYB, to show papers, to show IDs, to show passports and whatever, and we take it like normally. Why not, right? And in global, market issues didn't change it. Must have things a little bit improved. And this is how projects can build and navigate in this industry, right? Just take a look. Not many changes. It's almost the same. But the experience and knowledge of the whole space is much larger. That's why we are making step to the most important thing of this story is the actual liquidity works, right? Most of these, I know, influencers like analytics, I know, some other people, they rely on kind of outdated metrics. How usually people measure tokens or whatever, right? They say all-time high, who invested, what is technology, who are the partners, how much they raised, how much user base it had, right? How much, I don't know, how many advisors the project had, but this is nothing works now and will not work anymore. You can take a look at most of 80 projects in this year that raised like tens of millions, hundreds of millions, I know, whatever amount, had some technology, super ZK proof and whatever. Take a look at opening price, take a look at the price today, everything lost like 95%. Because it just makes no sense. We are not in 2020 or 2021 or 2017 when you say, hey, I built a new blockchain and people buy. No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. Market is developing, and that people who are here, they are much stronger, they are much smarter, and the competition is much harder. And people who invest in retail traders, professional traders, they can evaluate this stuff and don't buy these promises. Of course, you can speculate with this, you can make short-term money, you can short some stuff, you can long some stuff, but in general, people don't buy it, right? And liquidity is being concentrated around those companies, those tokens that have some business operations, that have some real value, and you could see that most of them, take a look at CoinMarketCap. It's still Bitcoin, it's still ETH, it's still Solana, it's BNB, it's Tether, and a few other tokens, right, that capture like 85% of the whole market liquidity. Why? Because market knows that they will survive. They will grow, or at least they will not die like others. And they exit other tokens and move liquidity to this. And let's think why it happens. Because you have to have a product, you have to have substance, you have to have some operations behind it. And because we have smart people, institutions, and we need to follow this. It will be a growth of DeFi, it will be growth and it's happening of yield-bearing products. Asset management niche is growing. RWA products will also grow because all the things are going to be tokenized and tokenization platforms will grow. Dark pools, it's like decentralized exchanges where no one can front run you, will grow. And fixed income products will also grow. For example, Morpho started offering fixed income loans and fixed income collaterals, which most of institutions need. Why? Because they want to farm small profits, they don't want to gamble. And crypto whales, they also follow this. They also not gamble, they mostly farm things and gamble with very small amounts. That's why it's very hard to sell some stuff now, and funding credits are very limited. What to say? It is not the end. It is the end, it's just beginning. We should see the rise of that fundamentals that we explained, of the niches that we mentioned.
Так, ну вот и все, собственно, закончился форум Blockchain Live 2025, Дубай, 2 дня, в принципе, было интересно, очень много людей, немножко суетно, так как мы такие не особо публичные люди, такие не склонные к нетворкингу и так далее, но было очень много интересных знакомств, встреч, вот, в том числе с Андреем Грачевым, короче, было прикольно. Одним словом, кое-что полезное мы оттуда вынесли. Публично никто ничего не озвучивал, никаких инсайтов не было. Это все сказки для бедных. Но, опять-таки, повторюсь, это важно для понимания, что крипта, да, и в целом индустрия, она есть, физически существует. Поэтому я все-таки рекомендую такие мероприятия посещать. И сам буду, думаю, на следующий форум тоже приеду. В общем, было замечательно. Организация была на супер высоком уровне, хочется отметить. Просто вообще в шик и блеск. Я, так как давным-давно еще сам организовывал какие-то мероприятия, то есть я понимаю, сколько здесь труда, усилий и денег было вложено в это мероприятие. Это, конечно, круто. Поэтому организаторам респект. Blockchain Live 2025. Было интересно, коллеги. До встречи!